Hey, it's Seth, coming to you from home because, let's be honest, where else would I be? Hopefully by this point in everything that's going on, you know what stay-at-home orders are, quarantines, how to properly wash your hands, all of these things impacting your life, I'm sure. I know they have mine. So I wanted to take some time out of my day to put together a comprehensive guide, really, to how to put together a podcast amidst these very unique and weird times. We'll be going through how Quinn and myself have been continuing to produce our podcast, The Serial Show, without being able to get together in person. Because if you want to start a podcast, or at least become more familiar with aspects of how to put one together, there really is no better time than now. This video will be broken down into 3 parts, researching for the podcast, recording the podcast, and then editing, with timestamps if you want to skip ahead in the comments below. Anyway, let's get started. So you'll see here that I've already put together a rough outline of the podcast episode, with the top part just being some reminders for us. I copy and paste those on every single document so we keep them in mind. But there are already a few articles that I've linked here that I find during the week, maybe thoughts that I had, or that Quinn shares with me that he'd like to discuss. We just put them in the document until Friday, which is the day that I really get to researching. I take a couple hours out to find some topics that we want to pursue in our episode. So while I spend some time researching, picking our topics that we'll discuss, I'm going to speed that up so you guys don't have to sit and watch me for 2-3 hours, and hopefully by the end of it we'll have a fully put together outline for the Serial Show. So now I've finished the outline. It took me about an hour and a half, and I'll be sending this off to Quinn, getting his thoughts on it, and we'll be recording our podcast Sunday night so that I can edit it on Sunday night, or more realistically Monday morning, so that we can get it published sometime during Monday. So it is 10:20 p.m. on Sunday night. Quinn and I have finally got some time to sit down and start the Serial Show podcast. Our kind of setup that this is our second time doing it not face to face in the literal sense, is I have the doc open on the left with tabs ready to go with all of our sources, and then Quinn over to the right, a mini Quinn there, so I'm actually talking to someone. I am rocking a Blue Yeti microphone hooked into Audacity to record. Okay, it is Future Seth here, and I'd just like to mention that I had my Blue Yeti about 10-16 inches away from my mouth, which wasn't great. It picked up a lot of noise from my computer, making it harder in post-production, which all would have been eliminated if I remembered that I have this thingy. So it's a boom arm. Highly recommend getting one. $20-$30 for a cheapie, but it means that you can position the microphone right in front of your mouth, reducing all that extra room tone noise from around you. So that is something I forgot and I wanted to mention, because that's another additional accessory to your podcasting setup that I would classify as necessary if you want to get the best audio quality possible. Anyway, back to the video. And what about you, Quinn?
So I've got my Sony RX100 for recording webcam. I also have a Blue Yeti hooked into Audacity. I record separately and send it to Seth, and we just really hope we did the clap at the right time and he gets it synced up for us. So that's my setup.
Yep, that's always the little nerve-wracking but exciting part. See if we get those claps to line up. So that's our setup, and with water by our side and plenty of tech news to talk about, we are ready to start the Serial Show. Okay, so it's the next day and I'm about to get started editing this podcast. Quinn and I both record into Audacity, but that's not what I use to put the clips together and produce the podcast. I choose to use DaVinci Resolve. It is known as a video editing software, but its audio workstation is incredibly robust. It does have a steeper learning curve, but if you can master it, the sky's your limit. So first, let's talk about syncing your audio. Now, when me and Quinn are in the same room, it's as easy as clapping in close proximity to both of the microphones, And then in post-production, you just take the two clips. If you're using DaVinci Resolve, you can auto-sync them, so the computer's doing all the hard work, but it's no problem if you zoom into the waveform and just match those two peaks. It gets a little more tricky the way that we're doing it, not in the same room but over Discord. So I used a clapper on my end, but with Discord there's about, it seems like 150 millisecond delay to half a second. So it can be off just a bit. So I come into DaVinci Resolve and I'll line those two audio peaks up just as a rough guide. And then as I'm listening to the two tracks play out, I'll make adjustments accordingly to just make sure the conversation is flowing. The second thing that you need when editing, but really this is something you do in production, is room tone. Now, if you're not sure what room tone is, that is the silence of a room, which isn't really silent at all. So about 10-15 seconds I find is all I need of complete silence from both me and Quinn. To get an accurate room tone, so that I can then come in post-production, go to noise reduction, choose that section of the clip, listen through, tweak the sensitivity, the dry wet settings, and get it just where I like it so it eliminates that little bit of static that will be present in your audio clips. If you're interested to know more about how that noise reduction works on more of a step-by-step level, let me know, and that could be the premise of a video I make in the future. Another great tool to use when working with audio is audio normalization. So that's typically shown as a normalize audio levels button. If you run your track through that, that's going to find a nice dB level that it can either increase or decrease, so that the average of your clip throughout all the highs and lows is set at the target level that you want it to be at. Now, with the audio relatively synced up, the main part of what's left to do is to listen through it. That means from start to finish, give it a listen, trim any parts out, make changes while you go through it. That's usually the best time to do that. So I just have three main things. If you only take away these three, they will greatly help improve your editing and your podcast as well. Sync your audio if at all possible, so that your conversation flows naturally throughout the duration of your podcast. The second tip is listen through your entire podcast when editing. This can't be stressed enough, as you don't want to roughly edit it, chop it together, upload it, and then get feedback back from one of your listeners that there's a bit that you missed that was absolute crap. And when listening through your podcast, don't be afraid to cut. If there's a spike in your audio track, just cut that little section, lower the level, the decibel level there. If there's a period when you're talking more softly than usual, but the person you're talking to is maintaining their level, just cut your section, raise the decibel level up. Help keep that consistency. And then third, use presets wherever you can. Spend a day learning what an equalizer is and how to use it. Find the frequency adjustments that best work for you, your vocals, and podcast, and then save that as a preset that you can later apply. The same goes for noise reduction. If you're recording in one room all the time under fairly consistent circumstances, record that room tone, set your noise reduction how you want it, and then save that as a preset. This will mean that when you're dealing with an audio track that comes from that same location, you don't have to mess around with setting things up again, but you can just go straight to that preset and load it up. These are all things that will improve the quality of your podcast, but also cut down the time it takes to edit it. Both are things that are great for you and great for your listeners. Now I'm going to jump into the editing, so enjoy the time lapse of that. And that is a successful podcast finished. Thank you so much for sticking around here to the end. I know I got a little technical and probably confusing there during the editing phase. Hopefully I didn't lose you too much. Obviously this is something that I'm still learning and have far from mastered it. But I'm happy to be able to have an opportunity to share a couple things that I wish I knew going into podcast editing and recording. I hope you have a great day, stay safe, and remember to wash your hands.